I met Gregg Allman at the Florida Theater in Jacksonville, where I grew up, at the end of one of his solo shows. And just the two of us sat in a dressing room and talked for nearly 4 hours. And the first and most important thing that he and I connected over that night, and what became the cornerstone and foundation of our relationship for the last nearly 6 years of his life, was our intimate personal relationship with God. And both of us had similar wounds, similar complex childhood trauma. So we both grew up never knowing our fathers. We both grew up feeling misunderstood and not loved or cherished or appreciated for who we really were. And I remember him saying at the very end of his life that it still hurt him that it wasn't until he picked up a guitar that he started getting some approval and acceptance from the girls and from the other kids at school, that there had to be a performance, or that there had to be an earning or an efforting, rather than just being liked for who he was. And I relate to that. He was a very pretty feminine boy, and I was a big tomboy with short hair, and there was a lot of violent bullying that we both experienced as children. So we connected over all of this. And there's sort of this idea of faithful people as being very conservative people. And he and I both leaned on things like substance abuse and relationships and all kinds of coping mechanisms to try to soothe the wounds and to distract and numb from and suppress a lot of these just heavy weights on our hearts that we were carrying. And what I have found, as someone who experienced a lot of religious trauma in the church, some of the worst bullying that I ever experienced was from other girls and children in my youth group at church. That's actually what wound up making me leave the church when I was about 15, when I got into drugs. And so I believe that the most important thing is finding the relationship with God. It doesn't matter where or how you find that relationship, it just matters that you find it. And so I want to talk a little bit about how, even if you're someone, I have become that person where I hear myself say things that would have just driven me crazy and really annoyed me, honestly, because I have so much religious trauma. I don't want to be proselytized to. So I am not here to tell you that you're going to burn in hell if you don't find God. I do not see God as this judgmental disciplinarian daddy in the sky who's watching my every move, just waiting to punish me and banish me to eternity of suffering. That's what I was taught. That's not my personal experience with God. My relationship has evolved into one that is an unconditionally loving, divine parent, and that it's not so much about God not wanting me to do certain things because he's going to punish me. It's more that God has a plan, a divine assignment, and a purpose, and gave me gifts to bring to my community, to this earth, while I'm on it. And so there are things that God would rather me not do, so that I can be aligned with my soul's purpose and my heart. So again, not about punishment, more about unconditionally loving me and wanting me to be in my purpose, okay? And I hear a lot these days about how our society, there's so much anger, right? There's so much anger in the grocery store, in traffic, just on the internet, in our data, on the news. And I hear people saying, I just don't know why everyone's so angry. And I see it really clearly. My opinion is that neuroscience shows that anger is fear or grief suppressed. And in a culture where we are expected to have constant forward linear progress for our entire lives, that we are taught that our worth and value lies within our professional success and our monetary status at a time when the cost of living is crazy, and the job force and just culture in general has changed in a way that it seems to me like the average person is not in a career that is aligned with their divine purpose, with their natural gifts, that the great thinker, grief educator, and author Francis Weller talks about how the soul has expectations. And one of the expectations that the soul has is that we will have dignity and purpose in using our gifts in community and giving to our community and having our community appreciate us and giving us that sense of I am interdependently connected and I matter and I bring something to the world, right? And so what I have found is that when we have childhood trauma, societal trauma, which most of us have, unmet needs, and when we use things like overworking, professional success, monetary gain, drugs, relationships, whatever your coping mechanism is, when we use those things to just cope, then the people around us will create this box that they will put us into. They label us, whether it's an addict or workaholic or promiscuous or whatever it is. And that can get you further and further away from who you really are. And you can start to believe that. Like, you start to believe the messages. If you have parents or caregivers or a family of origin who have blamed you, shamed you, invalidated you, neglected you, abandoned you, traumatized you, abused you, sent you all kinds of messages, both verbal and through action, that you're not worthy of care. And instead of being curious, like I still to this day, it blows my mind that we as a society are still punishing children and people for addiction, rather than saying to a 15-year-old child, what is causing you so much pain that you're feeling the need to escape reality? There is a curiosity and a compassion and an empathy that is needed for the ways that we handle how we cope in life. And so when you get boxed into these labels, that can get you further away from God and further away from yourself in a way that when you actually start healing, doing the inner work, facing your shadow, going to support groups, going to therapy, whatever it is, and you start getting close, this is my experience. When I have started to get closer to who I really am, to my soul's purpose and my morals, values, beliefs, my true self, to me, it feels so natural and like I'm getting back to who I was at 8 years old before the world got its claws in me. But the people around me are judging me, gossiping, saying, who does she think she is, whatever it is, right? All of the noise. And so what I have found is that some of the hardest things that I have ever been through have actually wound up being the greatest things that I've ever been through, because they forced me to go within myself and to turn to a higher power. So for example, being misjudged, being misperceived, being labeled as a gold digger with daddy issues, that was deeply painful, particularly as someone with a lot of childhood trauma and the wounds of feeling rejected. And there are studies that show that neurodivergent children, which I am neurodivergent, ADHD, autism, OCD, complex trauma, it's an umbrella term for those kinds of different ways that a brain functions. There's studies that show that neurodivergent children are told that how they're doing things is wrong tens of thousands of times more than a non-neurodivergent is a neurotypical children. And psychology calls that RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. and you start becoming very, very sensitive to being rejected because you have this lifetime of being told that who and how you are by nature is inherently wrong. So when I felt and was rejected and abandoned and neglected and abused and traumatized in childhood, within the home, outside the home, in church, in society, and then I get into a relationship where now I'm getting all of this judgment and bullying and harassment and gossiping about. It was just like wound on top of wound and pain on top of pain. But because of all of that, it forced me to sit with the wounds, to shine a bright light on all of the shadows that were lurking in my heart and soul from childhood and beyond. And I will never tell someone you should forgive someone for hurting you, because what I have found is that I needed to feel the rage and pain and resentment and anger and upset and grief in order to get to forgiveness. And I started having these conversations with God where I started really noticing that the anger and all of the emotions I just described, the anger and resentment towards the people whose actions caused me the most harm, it just changed who I am into someone I don't want to be, who I'm really not by nature. My greatest goal in life is to love and to receive love and to spread kindness and compassion and not to judge. I don't know what anybody's going through behind closed doors or in their soul. So who am I to judge how they cope with their humanity? And I started being like, okay, this anger is holding me back in a way that I'm not going to be able to create the life or be the person or have the relationships that I want to have. And so I started getting the intuitive feeling from God that it was time to start forgiving. No rush. This took years. And it would feel like, have you ever seen, where like a big cement wall is closing in, and it was just this big pressure of needing to forgive these people who have caused me a lot of trauma in my life. And I remember I would have days where I would just be paralyzed in bed and I would be sobbing and I would just be so exhausted from all of these years of being angry. And I would be resisting. The cement wall is like this resistance of, what do you mean I have to pray for the people who cause me the most harm? And then I started practicing it. And at first it was kind of a fake it till you make it thing. Okay, I'll pray for them. And then it started developing into a genuine desire for the people whose actions caused me the most harm to have peace, faith, justice, kindness, compassion, home, health, prosperity, purpose, alignment, meaning, love, community, dignity, great health care, joy, pleasure, play, rest, all of the things that I want for all human beings on this earth. I also want for the people whose actions caused me the most harm, the people who kicked me when I was down, the people who gossiped about me because of my grief and trauma and illness, the people who labeled me negatively and spread that around, damaging my reputation on a wide scale. You don't treat someone like that if you have peace in your heart. And so all of this brought me closer to God. And I think that a lot of us are sold this idea that you graduate high school and you either go to college or you learn your technical skill and you start your career and you get married and you have your 2.5 babies and you get your home and then you work for the next 30, 40 years of your life with 1-2 week vacation a year, and then you retire. And it's just this kind of like smooth sailing experience in capitalistic society that we've been sold. That in fact, what I find is more that Lauryn Hill, the artist Lauryn Hill, she talks about how when you are used by God, when you have a purpose and a divine mission to be used by God, you have to be humiliated and beaten down in ways that you learn your own shadows, that you're forced to turn within and say, who am I? When everyone else is calling me a gold digger, when everyone else is saying that I have daddy issues and bad intentions, when everybody else is calling my character and my truth into question, how can I, even and especially without a parent or a grandparent or an aunt who's, there was nowhere for me to go after Gregory died to be held by a family member when all of these people and the media and all of these people were speaking so terribly about me. There was nowhere for me to just go lay my head in someone's lap and have them stroke my hair and say, I see you. I love you. I know your character. I know what you did for Gregg. I know how much he loved you. I saw the love that you guys shared. That wasn't around me. And so I became very responsible for doing that for myself and for starting to cut out the noise, whether that was cigarettes or drugs or overeating or casual relationships or whatever it was, scrolling too much, binge watching TV, all of these things. I had to start cutting out the noise, setting boundaries with people who dysregulate my nervous system, learning to not be a people pleaser and to prioritize my own health over others' expectations of me. And cutting out that noise is what helps you get clear enough in your mind, heart, body, spirit to hear God speak to you. And God speaking to you can be really subtle. So for example, let's say there's something that just keeps popping up in your life ever since you were a child. Every once in a while you just think, man, I really wish I played piano. I really wish I could paint. I really wish that I were a poet. Those things will pop up over and over again. And a lot of times, because of the external noise, we'll just shove it down and say, oh, well, I'm not creative. I'm not talented. I'm too old. I don't have enough of a story to tell, whatever. There's a million different things that most of us have that will stop us from doing the things that God is continuing to say. Pick up that guitar, sit down at that piano, put that pen to paper. Cut out the noise of the people telling you that it's not realistic. And pay attention. I always say that you don't have to believe in God to start talking to God. You don't have to believe in God to start praying. And God and Mother Earth and all of the cosmos that God created is big enough and strong enough to handle your messiest emotions. If you are angry, enraged, bitter, cynical, bereaved, lost, hopeless, depressed, confused, whatever you are, God can handle that. You can scream at God. You can say, this isn't fair. Where are you? That's what I did. When I was 19 years old, I won't even get into all the details. I will just say that something really hard happened to me when I was 19 years old. And I went out into the street and I just screamed, if you exist, where the F are you? And I get goosebumps as I say it. I gave it to God, and I still do that. Sometimes I'll just have a day where, what do you want me to do? I've practiced forgiveness. I stopped doing the drugs. I take care of my body. I try to share my light. What do you want me to do? Because I'm human. And God can handle that. So I highly recommend, even if you don't believe, starting to talk to God and say, I'm angry about this. I'm heartbroken about this. And pay attention to what happens after you start praying. So I'll give you an example. One time I was deeply attached to somebody who caused me a lot of pain. And I just couldn't end this relationship. I was just really trauma bonded. I was attached to someone who was traumatizing my nervous system. That's what trauma bonding is, not bonding over trauma. And I was attached to this person and I prayed to God and I said, please, God, please take away my attachment from this person, please. And the very next day, this person did something so cruel and selfish and unkind that even all the painful things that they had done before that I had stayed in relationship with them, this one thing, it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. And if you don't pay attention to what happens after you pray, then you might not connect those two things, right? Oh, he just did something really terrible. Oh no, that rejection was protection. That rejection was divine redirection. For example, you might desperately want something. You might want to be in community with a certain group of people. You might have a professional goal, a creative goal, and you just keep getting rejected. This is what happened to me in the music industry after Gregory died. I just kept getting doors slammed in my face and doors slammed in my face when I was trying to creatively collaborate with people. And for years, I took it so personally. I just was so bereaved and I felt so excluded and outcast and untalented. And now I almost laugh when I look back and I realize, oh my gosh, God was protecting me the whole time. Every time I called an artist and said, do you want to collaborate on this song that Gregory and I wrote? No, I don't even want to hear it. I don't even want to have the conversation about it. And in my grief and in my loneliness and in my desire for connection, it just felt so painful. And I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, God, for protecting me. Those people didn't deserve to even be in a room with me working on those songs because they were unsafe for my nervous system. They were not a part of a safe space for me to be in. So when you are asking God for whatever you're asking for, pay attention to the doors that close and the doors that open. And I think I'll wrap it up here. I could talk about my testimony for hours and hours and hours. I still have so many of the challenging situations in my life that were created. It's like this big mess that I have to clean up from after Gregory died. I got very sick. I took on a bunch of debt and it was extremely expensive for me to get diagnoses for my medical health complications and conditions. And I still have this big mess to clean up. So all of these challenging situations in my life that have not changed, but my perspective has changed. And I feel so aligned with God that really for the first time since before Gregory died, I feel capable and I feel faithful that things will get better and that I am meant to learn certain skills in the waiting season, in the rejection season. One example is that I have dealt with so much online bullying as I've created and built my social media platforms over the 5 or 6 past years or so. And what I've found is that in order to achieve the dreams that I want to have, I'm going to have to deal with bullying and naysayers and people who don't believe in me. And so I had to get through being egoically reactive and getting my feelings hurt. I used to, every once in a while, I would look up someone who was bullying me online. I would pay for a background search on them and I would call them up at their home or their cell phone. And I would say, hi, this is Shannon Allman. I just got a really nasty comment on my social media from you. Would you like to discuss it? Like I was so reactive and I needed, again, it was these childhood wounds of needing to be validated and needing approval. And I worked through all that. So again, this is why I'll never tell someone, you need to forgive them. You need to not worry about what they think, because we're all on our own timeline. So sometimes in my experience, you have to work through being reactive, being egoic, trying to get that validation, because it's a process. This being human is a process, and maturity, spiritual maturity, emotional intelligence, these are things that we learn over time, right? So I had to learn these skills. When I wound up without a car and having my physical mobility so affected by my health after Gregory died, it was like, what do you mean I don't have a car and I can't walk well? Like, how on earth did I get into my 30s and wind up in this situation? I thought I did all the right things. I got the college degree. I worked the full-time jobs to get through my college. What the hell, right? And now I'm able to turn that and say, okay, what am I supposed to be learning in the stillness? What patience am I learning in order to have faith in what's to come? It's that idea where they say you walk by faith, not by sight. Instead of looking at the situation around you, you are looking at the vision in your mind. I have visions of specific goals and dreams that I want, and I am not going to let my situation right now that I can see dictate the vision that I have in the future. And God will force you to learn how to be present in the moment when all of your trauma is making you so ruminative and anxious and worst case scenario based thinking that it's, how am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to get groceries? Okay, is your rent paid right now? Do you have groceries today? If you are unhoused, are you safe in that situation? I wound up, after Gregory died, I wound up homeless, crashing on friends' couches, cleaning Airbnbs in exchange for staying at someone's home while I had a disabled body and was having to do physical labor in exchange for room and board. That was so intense, but it taught me to ask friends for help. It showed me that my worst fear of winding up on the streets because of childhood poverty, trauma, that's the narrative that I always go to. I didn't wind up on the streets. I wound up crashing on a friend's couch, and that was a blessing. So what are you being taught in your hardest season? And again, I am not saying that every hard thing has to have a silver lining. I am not saying that every hard thing, that there has to be a gift in it. I think really terrible things happen to wonderful, loving people. I don't even say that everything happens for a reason. I say that everything happens and we have the opportunity to make reason of it. There is evil and darkness and demons on this planet that we have to contend with, and they're real. And when a dark evil entity does something beyond unthinkably cruel to innocent, loving people, children, women, men, animals, I don't see a purpose in that. But after you survive it, you can choose to create purpose from it. Whatever you're going through, I'm sending you love. I hope that if you are surrounded by people telling you to get over whatever is hard, or that you're stuck, or that you're unworthy, if people are neglecting you and abandoning you in your worst times, I hope that you get to a point someday where you recognize that you're in the middle of your testimony, and to take it breath by breath, moment by moment, hour by hour. You are loved. You have a divine, unconditionally loving parent who is able to take your biggest grievances, your biggest traumas, your biggest, messiest emotions, and soothe you. Thank you for listening. See y'all.